What's up people, my name's Anton and welcome to September. Today I'm going to be taking you through a new workflow technique I've developed whereby you can customize and retexture assets that you've modeled or downloaded in a new way. So I've already made a video on this where we used Photoshop to retexture and add Photoshop images and sort of overlay them over pre-made textures. But in this episode we're gonna still use a Megascans asset, which I've done, but we're going to go through a actual Procreate workflow on iPad, which we can then import into Octane. And because I'm a graph addict, I'll show you how you can essentially write on your assets and models in 3D and then chuck it into Substance Painter to then overlay, redesign, add a little bit of dirt and wear to your textures, and eventually render it out nicely in Octane or Redshift, whatever you like. We won't be focusing too much on the render engines this time. It'll be more about sort of the texturing techniques. But having said that, I'll be using it in my new project quite a lot, and it's one of my new favorite ways to sort of go about texturing stuff, which is typically quite a boring process, but this makes it pretty fun. So without saying too much more, I'm going to hop right into importing the asset which I previously downloaded. Just make sure we're setting things to Octane here. We can locate our texture, or our asset rather, and then locate our textures, and we need to go about loading that into Substance and then airdropping that over to our iPad, and then we can switch over to our new setup. So if we head down here to Bridge, we can export our asset, and luckily with Bridge here, because this is all pre-modeled and UV'd for us, it should have some pretty high resolution UVs that we can work from. Before, with one of the models that I downloaded or used, the resolution was about 2K, which means that when you're like drawing over it, the resolution keeps bad and you kind of have to start employing distance and stuff in your renders, which is always super annoying. But that shouldn't be too much of an issue. So if once this becomes responsive, sweet. So Octane had a little crash there, but once your asset's imported, we can pretty much straight away just check a few things and see if we need to make sure this is working properly. So we quickly head on, and just for safety, we head into UV edit. We can double check what our UVs are looking like, nice and unwrapped, so they're sweet to go. We can head back over to standard, and what you want to do from this point is it's already textured and everything's loaded in, so we can literally export this as an FBX. So we head over, export, FBX, pretend we're trying to fit this into some sort of scene, maybe some sort of like urban rubble scene, and you need some sort of like bin, which is particularly graphed or looking dirty. You can use this sort of technique. So now Substance is open, we can close the dialog box and find where our bin FBX was. We should be able to drag this in pretty easily. So once Substance is loaded up, you want to close the little dialog box and drag your FBX in wherever that's located, and you'll see a little project window like this. You want to make sure the document resolution is set to 4096. We would select 8K if we could, but this is the max on Substance at the minute, and pretty much okay everything else, and you should see that your geometry should import nicely, and we'll have a bunch of layers here which we can play with and eventually use for texturing. Now, something I struggled with when I first had Substance was actually importing textures that I already had into the scene. I wasn't quite sure how to do it, how to UV and stuff, and it is fairly simple. I will show you in just a sec, and that is how we'll get the Megascans textures in here to then draw over. So we have our geometry here, which is all UV'd. Obviously, we've got the roughness here. Don't pay attention to how this looks too much. Once it gets textured, it will look fine. And if we just head over to Cinema real quick, just to quickly find where our textures are located, we can double click on the material, and once this loads up, head to the node editor and just find the image textures and click locate on them so we can find where our file directories are. Okay, sweet. So here we've got our albedo, bump, displacement, normal, roughness and specular. These are all that we need. So what we can go about doing is quickly copy this location, head up here to File, Import Resources, click Add Resources, paste your location in here so you got them all easily, and select the albedo, bump, displacement, or rather maybe albedo, bump, normal, roughness and specular for now, because Substance doesn't support displacement for this method at the minute. So we can click Open. Make sure we're selecting them all and just making sure we're clicking texture here. It's going to set them all to texture, and you can import them to your current session. Click import, and this should bring them in to your tab here under a little tab of like user presets and whatnot. And then we can save this file so that if we crash, we're safe, and we should be good to continue. So any sec, amazing. We can save this as bin.spp. And what you want to do is pretty simply just drag these on one by one, and has a nice little tab here which lets you select which one you want. This is our albedo, so we can hit base color. And what you want to do is head over to projection here and set this to UV projection, and you'll see that it'll fit your bin nicely. So we've got our bump here, right click, set this to height, and the same thing with UV projection, and you'll see it'll make a new layer. We can drag our normal onto, set that to normal, UV projection, and then our roughness, UV projection, and we have our specular here, which unsure if there is one. I don't think there is. You may be able to fit this with metallic, but I'm unsure if that's actually going to have too much of an effect. But we'll leave it there. Sometimes play with the way the textures plug in, they'll work nicely. But for now, this is what our bin looks like bland. So this is the layering protocol here by which we will overlay our textures in. But what you want for now is just the FBX by itself, right? So if we take this off really quick, we can duplicate this, make this invisible, or rather delete this and delete this. Ooh, hold on. What we want is just to copy this bin into a project and delete the material and just have the bin by itself, which we can export. So once you've pasted your bin model into a new project, what you want to do is actually export it as an OBJ, because the method we're using with Procreate only supports OBJs at the minute. Obviously, Alembic and FBX are without doubt the favorites, but for now, this is the only method that works. So if we head to Wavefront OBJ here, make sure we're hitting OK, and we can type in bin, no texture. I mistakenly exported this as an FBX just now, but if we head over like that, you'll see we have our bin located right in CRT renders, I believe. So it'll be one of these ones. We just right click and take a look at the properties really quick. We can see this is the OBJ. So if we copy this, and then I use Dropbox to get the files over to my iPad. So we head over to Dropbox and just paste this in. We should be pretty good once this loads up to get this over to our device. So now on our iPad, we can head to Dropbox. We can locate the OBJ we've downloaded. We can make sure we're downloading this and probably saving this to device. You can save this to files, seems to work quite well. You can save it to on my iPad, click save here. And then what we can do is head into Procreate here, hit import, and we can browse to find where our bin no texture OBJ is, just like this. And you can see we've actually got a supported 3D bin here in Procreate, which we can now draw over. So now this is where your creativity can really shine through, right? Because you have the ability to draw whatever you like on this and really retexture this to whatever sort of look you're after. So typically what I'll do is, say I was going for a graffiti look, which for the sake of this video I may well do, you can head on your computer or your other screen and sort of look up some references or draw what you like by yourself. But for me, I'm just going to go about doing some quick little bits of graph that I can use or like the look of, because say we're going for an urban scene, firstly it fits, and secondly it looks pretty cool, right? So we can stick with something like that. And once you've got some ideas loaded up, you can have a little scroll about, and what you want to do is head to the layer channel here, and you'll see the way to sort of set up. So you've got your base layer here, it should all be pre-UV'd, and you can head over here, find a brush which works. So I've got some loaded in here, and you can see you're getting some pretty high resolution already type sketches that you can do. So if I look for some reference, start thinking of ideas, we can write all sorts of stuff. So I quite like writing little deep things or cool things that I sort of see on the internet. You can use whatever you like for referencing, but for me, I'll just sort of like play and write whatever sort of comes to mind, right? So say we wanted to sort of just like do a kind of a tag look, right? We could, I found these brushes on Creative Market, I believe, and for like a tenner you can get this really cool looking like marker almost effect. They've also got spray paint somewhere here. You've got, well, all sorts really that you can use. So you've got some more paint-ish type brushes there. You can head down to spray paints here. You've got ultra fine nozzles, you've got fat nozzles. There's also a way you can create your own brushes, which is pretty cool. But for now, I really like these markers purely because of the way they look. You've got fine tip here, which makes it more rounded, which is quite cool too. So maybe we'll stick with something like this. Say we're trying to go for something more like, and then get the R going, maybe something like this, and then you can sort of draw over like this, add a little circle on top for good measure, and some underlines because that's typically pretty used in graffiti. And we've already got some graph there on a layer that is fairly big, but we could use this. If you're unhappy with sort of how thin it is, personally I wish this was a little bit thicker. We have the ability to do that, so we can sort of go over it a little bit. Obviously this was done with a bit of speed, so you may be better with, there's all sorts of things you can do in Procreate. You can duplicate it and then move it over ever so slightly like this, and you're sort of getting a nice little bit of thickness to it there. You can move it over even more like this, and you can see you're getting some pretty cool pen effects. There's a material blender I believe here which you can use, but I think that's more for like sort of like smudging things. You can merge this down a little more, and you can grab the same tip and sort of head over the bits which you think need a bit more work. You have the ability to rotate over this. You can see we're getting some pretty nice looks, and just like that you can head over, fill up some of these gaps here, make this look a little more penny, more written. You also have the ability to, if I was to make this tutorial a little longer, you could upload this kind of thing to Photoshop, and then in Photoshop you could add like a sort of mask of any kind of grunge or scratches or whatnot, and that would give you the ability to make this look even more warm, because right now you may well see that once we upload it to Substance Painter, it's going to look pretty clean. And if you're going for a more worn look, obviously those are the little details that matter, and you have the ability to do that too. So it really is what you make of the software that you're using in your workflow, which is why I choose to make videos on it, because I think your workflow is actually fairly important. Ultimately, what you put into projects and pieces is what you get out of it. So if you manage to sort of like employ a workflow and work around things in a way that other people don't, then it will eventually serve you. So if we can maybe find some more tags, we can change the color here a little bit. So if we go for red, we can go for something maybe up here. We can go for I really want this to be a little bit thicker. I'm not entirely sure if it's going to let me change that. So we've got scatter, rotation, count, taper, stabilization. It's gonna, you do have some settings here in Procreate which seem pretty good. You want stroke path, see spacing, we'll just change that. So properties, brush behavior, maximum size here, something like that is a little better. So here we can tone this down a little bit and do ourselves a super nice sort of tag which looks a little like this. Doesn't matter if it's being overlaid, because ultimately we're working with a sort of street look here, and just like that we can start writing over some stuff. Sort of this, you will get better at this as you draw more graffiti, saying that's what you're trying to do. For me, I sort of just sketch from my mind or little bits that I see. We can go about drawing this over here, down a little bit like that, and straight down like this. along with some quotation marks and a quick little circle up here. You're getting some cool little bits of graph there. And say we wanted to move that, we also have the ability to do that. So we can grab this there after and sort of drag this about to wherever we like. Say we want it on maybe this side a little more. We can also do that. Although I quite like it up here. We can make this a little smaller. Maybe rotate this a little bit. It's got its own projection to it. So you can do that. Move it down here if you wanted to, which I think looks a little better. And say we wanted one last bit. We can sort of get an idea of thinking, well, how would you go about doing this? Start thinking maybe we can write Brooklyn or something New York related. I've currently got Pinterest up on my computer screen, so I can sort of scroll through and see if there's anything I like the look of, and I can just quickly do it. You can also go about doing throw-ups. If people don't know what throw-ups are sort of like the fatter, more bubble writing. I tend to like the look of tags a little bit because they seem a little simpler. Scroll through here, find something that we like, bear with me. And we can write, you also have the ability here to write something that sort of makes people think a little more. I always think that's quite a cool little asset to have if you're making art. It's really, really cool. We can, so we wanted to write Brooklyn, right? We can head here, or Brooklyn's actually a little cheesy. I take that back. We don't really want to write Brooklyn. Everyone sort of writes Brooklyn. We can go for maybe more like slightly edgier tag. We can go for something which looks more scribbly, but maybe we can go for a sort of, we're working with a green bin if I remember correctly, so we can pick something yellow and just do something that looks cool. So we got our tags there which work quite nice, and we've got, say we wanted to write over like this, and then maybe make this a tiny bit smaller. Ability to too small. It's quite a fine little line here. Something like that. And then we can draw over like this. Draw that over for later. Keep that up. And we can draw that over. Down, round. Up, down. This isn't going to make too much sense, but we're just sort of sketching out letters which look graffiti-esque. And we can keep that over once and twice. Up here, a quick circle, and we can load this up here to a ba-bum, ba-bum, bum. This almost looks German, but if we were doing something a little more surrealist, ultimately it's the look that you're going for, right? So if we wanted to head down here and up and round, got more of an S there, keep this in, we got rather W, A, and then we got shoddy. We can get Y like that. Quick little squiggle. Get two little dots there. I'll keep that a little nicer. And 3 here for luck. We've got some nice little tags there. We can add one more to the bottom here just for the sake of it. We're going to do like a quick Bronx type tag. Get a black, and I'm thinking this brush for the sake of doing something a little different. And we can reduce the size for super quick. You want this to be like a quick brush off almost. Oh, that's too big. Slightly smaller. You can go bam, bam, and then bam, Or are they too big? We need to keep this exact so we know what we want. Hold on. Just going to switch up the... We've got a T there for that, which can head over that, and a curve down. We can add some quotation marks here. And we can give a quick O with a dot there. Keep that up. Give a quick N. And we want an E at the end. Make that curvy as hell with a quick star. And we can curve this. Oh, double tap the pencil there. We can curve this over. And then add some quick rotation marks there. And we can leave that as something that works. We can move this over ever so slightly. We've done those both on the same layer there, but I believe we can still, if we click rectangle here, select this little bit of graph we want and move that over wherever we want. So we can even rotate this bit more like that and say that's the look we're after. We can say, okay, that's pretty graphed up. Obviously you can do the whole thing, but for now we'll leave it as something like this. There's also a way you can add stickers and stuff. We might do that separate videos, decals, but for now, this is sort of what you want. So we've got our colors, we've got our graph. Now we can go about exporting this texture, right? So we take a look at our layer setup here. We've got our graffiti and we've got our base layer, which should be pretty good to export how you want to. So if we head over here to the settings tab where it says share, you want to click the share textures PNG option just down here. And it's going to create a folder. It's not going to export as PNG, it's going to create a folder. So the correct way to do this is actually find a location in your files, I believe. We'll just use on my iPad, I've got the CRC monitor one there. You can see what I used before. You can hit save. And then what you want to do is navigate to your files. If you use an iPad, then it's this. You can see a previous one that I had open there. You can locate where that was. So for me, it is here. And you've got the roughness and your actual writing here. Cool. So you've got a little bit of overlap there at the top there. You can see where it's sort of loaded over, but this is what you want. So if you hit export here now, you can take this over to your Dropbox, upload it so that it syncs straight to your PC. Obviously you don't need to use Dropbox, it goes without saying. You can just upload it or email it however you want. You can lock over and we can transfer back over to our PC. And once you're back over here, we can find where our file is. So just to make sure it's synced to the Dropbox properly, I believe we should have a bin no texture part here. So we can head over here, right click, just head over to property, so we don't need to load it up again. We can find the location of where it actually is. We can head to file here, import resources like before. And we can, once this loads up, we can head to add resources, go to our Dropbox folder, locate where our graffiti is. So for me, it is, you can see the little Dropbox notification there. It's this one just here. So we can click on that. We can head to open. And I believe this is going to import as white. So we have a few ways of fixing that. So if we head into project bin, import, make sure we're saving that. We can drag this over and set this to base color. Okay, sweet. Computer seems to be crashing like crazy today. But if you have a little scroll through the blending modes here, should give you the ability to sort of pick one which works a little better. So we've got pass through there. We can click on this and we've got multiply, which works pretty damn well. We can change the brightness here. You can activate which sort of aspects you like. So if you remember, there was a roughness channel too, which we can use. But for now, I'd say this looks pretty good. You're using paint, right? And then paint will typically sort of like match the roughness of whatever you're spraying over. But this, I'd say at this point, looks pretty good. As I said, while I was drawing, if you wanted to add a little more customization to this, you could import this texture to Photoshop and literally on the white texture, just drag over any sort of grunge mask which covers the graffiti and set it to like multiply or divide, or one of the ones which sort of makes it look like there's little etches and parts taken out from the writing, and that will really add something to your piece. But for now, if you wanted to export this, you would be able to. You could export this into Octane, export your textures and just substitute them in. But I'm going to go one quick little step further with a tip that I wanted to show off in Substance, which I've used quite a lot. And that's how you would go about adding like dirt to your edges here. So if we just save our project super quick and we head over to up here to edit and then bake mesh maps, set your output size to 4096 and quickly click bake, or rather bake trash can. And you'll see what Substance is going to go ahead and do is sort of compute the edges and vertexes and sort of like UVs of this model in its own way, so that it can add generators and sort of do a little bit of customization of itself, right? So if we just wait for this to finish. So once that's processed through, bear in mind it was being a little slow for me because I had C4D open. What you have the ability to do is head over to your materials here, make sure we've got nothing in the search, and whatever material here that you select, if you create a new layer real quick, just like this, you will be able to use as almost like worn metal edges on your geometry, right? So we're working with a bin here. So I'm going to think of something, maybe you could have like grainy plastic. I think grainy plastic should work quite well. You can drag that over the top here and it's going to cover it up. You can edit the tiling here so it becomes a little smaller, or rather that's bigger. You can find something like this. And what you want to do is right click on the texture, click add black mask, and then on that black mask, right click and click add generator. And you can select here a tab which says dirt or metal edges. I actually meant to click metal edges to be fair, but they both do a pretty similar thing. You can see by tweaking these, we're getting a little bit of dirt scattered across the bin. So for a bin, dirt might even make more sense. You can sort of see here specifically. If we turn this down a little bit, it becomes a little more blurred. And if we have this all the way up, but sort of turn the dirt level down, you can see it's keeping it a little more, little dirtier. And just like that, you can see our graffiti starting to look a little more worn, except this is kind of becoming invisible, right? So if we delete this super quick and replace that generator with a metal edges generator, you'll see it'll do a pretty similar thing, but it will stick it more to the edges. So you can already see there, it was kind of this top bit that I was thinking needs a little bit of dirtying up. So you can increase the wear level here, and it sort of gravitates far more about the edges and the corners of the bin as it sort of would with general wear. And you can see we're getting a nice little bit there. This is what it looks like without, and then with. It really adds something to your renders, and sort of like texturing as a whole is obviously like a rabbit hole. Texturing as a whole is like a rabbit hole, like an art that you can really go into. So you have a lot of customization here, but for now, this side really looks like they could have used something, but for now, we'll stick with what we have, and we can go about exporting this. So if we head to File, Export Textures, this is a whole way that you need to do this. You need to head to Output Template, and you can pick a lot of these options. I say a lot of these options, I've only ever tried two. But if you're using Octane or Redshift, then Arnold, AI Standard, or if you're using Redshift, there is actually a Redshift tab. I'm kind of offended they haven't included Octane here, but you are able to use these. So I typically use Arnold AI Standard, just because for some reason I get some weird sort of like OCD about it when I import Octane to Redshift textures. I almost think like it looks off. It's built for Redshift, it's built for like a different type of renderer. Why am I using that? And then you can locate your export directory. You can find that here. I tend to make a new one, so I'm not replacing anything. And you've got your bin exports. So just make a new folder, export it in, and just like that, select the folder, export everything through, wait for this to process, head back into our folder, head back into our project, double click on the material, node editor, and we can go about replacing some of these materials. So luckily, the way the Substance does it is it just replaces everything over, or rather re-exports everything as one. So you don't have to worry about too much blending inside the node editor here. But you can literally head over here, find your location. We need to open this output directory really quick so we know where our stuff is. Copy the location. My roommates are being very noisy, but it's calm. We can head over here to where we're importing our in fact, let's close Substance real quick so my PC can actually handle our finishing touches here. And you can see we'll import this any sec. And once that loads in, we can find where our textures are, paste our location in, And we're replacing the base color here, so we can open that up. Make sure we're clicking yes. We can locate where our normal is. Click on the view thing there. Head over here. Look at our normal, yes. Our displacement, we can probably leave the way it is. We can quickly find our roughness. Just here. Tap on that. Over here. Paste in. Do the same process over and over and over again. The good thing about the edge detect, or rather the metal edges, is it's going to export into the roughness too, so you get a nice little bit of variation on the geometry rather than something which looks quite flat. And go over to your bump here. Really quickly re-export that one in as well. And you should be pretty safe with that. There is a metalness option too, but it isn't used here, so we can leave that out. We can set this to aces because we're going to do that anyway. Rough it up into Octane. And you should be able to see we need to drag the material on. Should be able to see a good result of what we've been making. So we rotate to the right angle. We can render this out really quickly here, and you can see the result we're getting. Quickly, just to make this look a little more pleasant, we can load in our HDRI that we want to use. And once this loads up, which it is doing, is just getting everything prepared. We can pick out our Creative Office HDRI. Props to anyone who managed to guess that one. And we can get it in just like we always do, heading to commercial locations, Creative Office, picking our color space to ACCG. You can see we're looking pretty good already. We can duplicate this, clear this one, and then set our type to visible environment. Play with wherever our light is shining here. And just like that, you can see we've got some graffiti on our geometry. This will undoubtedly take some tweaking if you're fitting this in the scene. Obviously, it's down to the way you do it. If I was to redo this, I would 100% add a little more wear to the way that the writing actually looks. Specifically, I think I'd take the UV map of either the metal edge wear or the bump sort of displacement of the bin itself and use that as an overlay in Photoshop to sort of take away from this. As I said, you can sort of import your own grunge textures, which would work quite well, but that would really add a sense of realism because it would go against the wear of the actual bin itself, which would look really sick. But for now, this is kind of the look we've achieved. As usual, sort of take my method and sort of run with it. This was slightly rushed, I apologise, but for the sake of argument, this is how you'd go about doing something like this. It's a method that I've used over and over again, and you can really adapt and explore stuff like Substance Painter and Procreate because a lot of software are updating the way they sort of import and treat geometry, and it is pretty sick. You've got a lot of freedom and a lot of stuff that you can do. But for now, I will leave you here with that little nugget of info. And I'll see you in the next video. So I appreciate everyone watching. Thank you so much. I'm glad you guys are enjoying the content. And I will see you next time. So thank you for watching.